Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar that has been organized as part of National Career Week. In today's webinar, we're going to talk about careers in architecture, and joining us today to do just that is Bruno Silvestre, who is a senior lecturer and course leader for BA Architecture at Kingston University. Over to you, Bruno.
Thank you very much, Stefania. I'm going to share screen. PowerPoint is this visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so thank you very much for having me. I'm going to do a kind of brief introduction of the course with a particular focus on what I think is most useful for applicants, which is a fairly detailed insight into what is the first year experience, and then with a couple of things about expectations, etc., in the years ahead, and a very brief, I don't want to make these too complicated, a very brief explanation of the curriculum. So Kingston School of Art, this first image shows, is quite emblematic, quite representative of the culture of our course. We're very much devoted to building as a physical artifact, to its material presence and its material articulation. So there's a very strong culture of model making in our department. So Kingston is kind of 20 minutes from Waterloo, southwest London, in the fringes of London. This is the new building, the townhouse by Grafton Architects. It's a building that has a library, has an amphitheater, is a building that we occasionally use, is kind of next to our campus, but not on our campus. The townhouse won the award for the best building in Britain in 2021. And the architects, Grafton Architects from Ireland, were awarded the Pritzker Prize, which is a sort of a Nobel Prize for architecture. And then kind of 5-minute walk from that building is the Kingston School of Art in Knights Park campus by a river, which is a river that then connects to the Thames River in Kingston Town Centre. And the top 2 floors that you can see in that kind of rusty metal windows is the Department of Architecture. And the bottom 2 floors are the workshops. We have some of the best workshops, I think, in British higher education. These workshops have facilities for wood cutting, metal cast, plaster cast, absolutely everything. And the reason why the workshops are so comprehensive in terms of their facilities is because the Department of Architecture is part of the Kingston School of Art. So the Kingston School of Art has interior design, furniture, product design, animation, illustration, fashion design, etc. So you will be part of a very intensely creative community. Just briefly, what is architecture? Architecture is made of 4 fundamental pillars of the discipline and the profession. Reading, which is finding architectural meaning in the analysis of built and unbuilt works, writing and culture. In other words, it's kind of the history of architecture. Representing, non-verbal and non-written communication to self and to others, so in other words, drawing and architecture represented in drawing. Tectonics, making as a culture an ethical framework and a technical knowledge, so the technical side of architecture and how it is made, assembled and built. And then is, because it's a profession, professional practice, the duties and responsibilities of the architect to themselves, their clients, and to society, is a professionally accredited course by the Royal Institute of British Architects and the Architects Registration Board, much like professions like medicine. The curriculum is approved and scrutinized by these accrediting bodies every number of years. So going into year 1, this is a photograph from the year 1 studio. not long ago, a couple of months ago, still in the first semester. And what is life like in first year? So in first year, you have you will be part of an intake of about 100 to 120 students every year. And this is normally divided in 6 studios of 18 to 20 students. This is an image of the timetable that we publish at the beginning of every year. And I'm just going to give you an insight of the projects that we do in first year. So we do 4 small short projects in first semester. That's up until Christmas at the bottom of the page. And then in second semester, we do 1 short project and the main project, which we call chapter 6. So the projects in first year are called chapters. We have this narrative approach to education, to teaching, that each assignment that you do scaffolds and clearly relates to the next. That's why we call them chapters as a sequence. A typical week in first year is one that is kind of bookended on Monday and Friday by 2 studio days. On Monday, the design studio, and on Friday, the representation studio. And then throughout the week, on Tuesday, you normally have lectures, history lectures and professional practice lectures. And on Thursday, you normally have lectures on making and construction. And then Monday and Friday are the 2 studio days. So these 6 chapters, I'm going to illustrate what our students have been doing with them. Chapters 1 to 6, the first 4. We do 4 short chapters in the first semester because we think that, well, there is a kind of a very steep learning curve of learning skills. First year is entirely in pencil by hand. There is very little computer design in first year. And then so those 4 chapters before the winter break are quite useful for students to gain confidence, but also to put an effort, come in, every day of the week, to put an effort and to see the outcome in a fairly short period of time. So architecture starts with seeing. Is an assignment that we take students to a site somewhere near Kingston. This one was 2 years ago near Oval, a place called Bonington Square, southwest London. And we get each pair of students to measure the facade of a building, to take notes, to take photographs, to sketch in their notebooks, to make kind of a survey. And then they come to studio and they spend 2 weeks doing this drawing to scale. So every brick is in the right place, every window has the right measure, everything is very accurate and analytical and objective. The other side of this chapter is what we call the memory survey. It has no dimensions, no scale, no measurements, no request of any rigor. It's a window from memory. It's a window or a door or an architectural element, we tend to do the window, that has been part of your own personal history, own personal experience. And this is quite interesting for us and for the students to know one another better. So then we gather in our atrium, in our central space here, and we line the walls with these 2 types of drawings. And then each student has a voice to present themselves and their own work. Architecture is a collective work. Is the first actual design project. So the first chapter is about learning representation. The second one is about the invention and conception and imagination of space. So we give students a given form. In this case, a cube kind of cuboid is 6 meters by 6 meters in plan, and in height it can go 6 to 12 meters. And we ask students to produce 2 kinds of drawings. On the left here, you see the plan with I'm going to try to put my pointer. You see the plan of the building with 4 elevations, like unfolded. And on the left, you see an axonometric drawing with kind of an X-ray transparency that you show the volume of the building, but you show the kind of the content of the building within. And then students, besides those drawings, they make a model to scale at scale 1 to 20. And we set up these photography sessions, and they photograph their models properly, which is also quite an important skill. And then, so that these exercises, there is no sight to it. It's just a very intense kind of study of space in relation to natural light. And then we put these all together. And the reason why we call it collective work is because each of these buildings by each of the students that you can see that are, so different. Each of these buildings has 2 side doors in a given location. That then the picture on the right, you can see the variations of light and darkness through these long sequence of rooms that you see here in the room. And then the third chapter, each design studio, each group of 18 to 20 students, is given 2 rolls of scaffolding mesh, the scaffolding mesh that you see in kind of building sites around the city. They are 2 meters wide and 50 meters long. Each group is given 2 rolls, and the students need to use their bodies as structure, and then the fabric to formulate a space, to invent a space out of their bodies. And so then students spend a couple of weeks making models, working with fabric, and here you see the nails replicating human bodies in the model. And then the students put it together. This is us in one of the spaces of the townhouse. Then the students perform the enactment of this body pavilion that they have 5 minutes to assemble, and they need to stand for 15 minutes so we can have a conversation, and then 5 minutes to take it down. And this is normally choreographed, and we will probably be working with a performing arts department, with our colleagues in dance, to help us with the brief and to work together with us on this. Architecture is for others. Is a construction project, so you're going to have your hands at work, in the workshops. And this is a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, in central London, in Store Street near Bloomsbury. Outside the building center, where our students built these temporary structures that stood on that square for 2 or 3 weeks. But you build these, you design these with your colleagues and with your tutors, and then you build it in the workshop, and you pack it up, you take it to site, and you erect these structures. This is 2 years ago when we moved into our new facilities, into our new building. We gave the students the task to build, storage units for architectural models, which is something that we need a lot here in our department. And then chapter 5, architecture is made from architecture, is the idea that, you study existing buildings, you study buildings that your tutors present to you. In this case was in 6 studios. Each studio was studying a building, and each student was producing their own individual model. At the end of this chapter, we made an exhibition in our gallery here on campus to show the rest of the School of Art, the effort of our students. So here are, 20 models of 6 buildings. It's just a sample. We had 100 models altogether. And this year, these models were for students to learn how these buildings are actually built, the secrets of their construction and the articulation between the several layers of material. We've had this chapter in the past that is related with travel. So here is a student, might not be very clear, but this piece of cast that you see in the foreground is a student holding a model of the steps that you can see in real life in the background. And so the idea is that students build a model, and then the model is small enough that they can put in their luggage. And they travel in this field trip with us. This one was to north of Portugal before COVID. And then the students, when they arrive at these buildings that they're visiting with the model that they made before visiting the building, it's quite interesting that these models and this work give students a voice to talk about the buildings that they've never seen before. So, and then, during those trips, we encourage everyone to sketch, and we sit down and review everyone's observations and sketches during the visit. This is 2 or 3 weeks ago. We haven't traveled abroad yet this year. It's probably something that we will do. We will resume again next year. This is in Somerset. We took 80 students on 2 coaches. The picture on the left is a place called Chateau Farm that has a collection of very interesting contemporary modern farm buildings. And that's the owner of the farm speaking to our group of students. And then 10 miles away from it, we visit this building, the Upper Lawn Pavilion, designed by Alison and Peter Smithson, quite a seminal building in the history of British modern architecture. And that the owners of the house were kind enough to host us in a visit to this house. So learning from visiting buildings and from traveling is something that is also part of our curriculum. And then lastly, the longest project and the most important one that kind of encompasses all the skills and learnings of the previous 5 chapters. Architecture is Slow is a building that is normally on the site of chapter 1. So chapter 1 at the very beginning gives you an introduction to chapter 6. And it's normally a small building of 200 to 300 square meters. There were 2 houses 2 years ago. This year we're doing, a small local library, small briefs on a given site. And here is where students then push all their learnings to the limit to finish the academic year. And this is photographs of physical models from first year. Here's a small library space. Drawings, drawing by hand. This is a charcoal drawing. These drawings are very important. And the expectation is that you reach the end of the first year and you can put a table in our summer show that looks like this. That has on the bottom left a plaster cast, on the top left a balsa wood model, a metal cast here, bits of structure made of MDF, as you can see throughout. And then here you see drawings, orthographic drawings like sections. You see sketches. You see here a site plan of a building next to a river. And here you see photographs of buildings that were important for the students' project, and a variety of drawings throughout. So this is what we hope a first-year student is able to orchestrate this variety of design instruments by the end of first year. So then a kind of a quick review of the curriculum. So we have 3 modules in first year, 2 30-credit modules and 1 60-credit module. They all have names that are relatable to the chapters that I just described. And here is, for example, is how the chapters relate to those modules. There's a couple of other assignments that are not here, like, for example, in architecture starts with seeing. We have a written assignment that is an essay that is based on a lecture series on the history of architecture. And then this is how the chapters convey. The architecture is for others. Both of those chapters are actually group work. So that's one thing that we try to reinforce in first year, because architecture is something that you will never do on your own. Even if you don't employ anyone working with yourself, you will always need to talk to a structural engineer, to an environmental consultant, to a plumbing consultant. So it's always a team effort, to builders and clients, etc. So you're always part of a team. And so the culture of working in teams and working professionally in groups is something that we instigate in the very first year. Then in second year, there are 4 modules, but the same number of credits. Architecture is made in play as kind of an experimental model for experimentation in construction and experimentation in drawing. And then architecture is seen by each one of us differently is a theoretical reflection where you write an essay and you start kind of your dissertation. And then architecture is shaped by society, which is about professional practice and the ethics of the profession, and the design studio. The design studio is the big one, which in second year is called Architecture is a Matter of Climate and Comfort. Our modules have these names. We hope that they are relatable to students before they come here. This one that is called Architecture is a Matter of Climate and Comfort, you could argue, is actually about nothing else. Is to address our relationship, how to mediate our lives between us and nature. Architecture protects us from climate and gives us comfort. And then in third year, there's 3 modules. And you may know, going back to second year, in the second module, architecture is seen by each one of us differently. In the third year, the same module on reading and the dissertation is called Architecture is a Common Ground. So, and then the second module is a matter of ethics and competence, which is professional practice. And then the big design module before you graduate, this is architecture to me right now. So, and then the expectations is that following year 1, you will continue to experiment, testing materials and ideas through making. You will develop and consolidate your representation and drawing skills to a level of excellence. And this is a drawing by Yusuf. 3 years ago, he won, nearly 4 years ago, in the summer of 2018, Yusuf Khalil was the best undergraduate student in the United Kingdom. And that's one of the drawings that convinced the juries at the Architects Journal. So we hope that you will be able to handle design instruments. This is a section through a building that is produced digitally and then converting it into a Photoshop PSD file, and then with layers, how sophisticated the level of editing of these files, these drawings become. And this is a digital model pasted into a site photograph of a project in the Alps in Switzerland. And we encourage students to keep their hands active and to keep making physical models all the time. And then this photograph is one of our students on the left, Joseph Marshall, that graduated. And here's a photograph taken from a publication. Joseph is working at Studio Mumbai in India, one of the most celebrated architectural practices in the world. The life of the department is quite lively. We have on Tuesdays and Wednesdays lectures here. I mean, this is kind of COVID times, the top ones. You can see, well, there were 2 in the atrium and 2 were already on Zoom. But we have, weekly lectures in the evening and weekly lectures at lunchtime that are open lectures to everyone. And a piece of advice, the empowering tools that between now and joining an architectural school that you should, we encourage you to pursue, is to develop a habit, a consistent habit of sketching wherever you are. A habit of reading. Architecture is an incredibly fascinating field of study, but a very complex one, and it has many readings, many ways of reading it. So if you can get surrounded by architecture books. Attending architectural lectures, the Architecture Foundation, the RIBA, they have very strong lecture programs, and you can watch stuff online. Online there is an abundance, an infinity of material and lectures that you could watch. Some are good, some not so good. The yellow square on the right is one of the most successful architectural podcasts in the world that is produced by us. Is a series of interviews with very well-known architects, and these just 1-hour conversations that normally precede their evening lecture here at the school. You can follow us on Instagram. On the right is the K-Arch Society, which is our student society, which is an absolute joy to see it so active and organizing debates and lectures run by students that invite guest speakers. And then our own Instagram account, KU Archland, which means Kingston University Architecture and Landscape. And I'm not sure if this is useful, but I'm going to do it. It takes us 2 or 3 minutes. Is portfolio guidelines for anyone who wants to apply with us. I mean, this, when you come to apply to study architecture with us, you will be given this information, but I'm happy to run through it briefly. So when you submit a portfolio, we would like to see a collection of work that illustrates your range of skills and expresses your visual and aesthetic sensibilities. We'll be looking at the work in your portfolio to provide evidence of your potential as a designer. We would welcome all forms of media and techniques that you may have been developing in the last few years. These can be freehand sketches, life drawings, as well as pencil, charcoal, pastel, crayon or pen drawing, printmaking, painting, any technical orthographic design drawings, model making and prototyping, any collage or photo montage or photography. We'd welcome any other form of visual expression not listed above, as long as you consider it important to describe your skills. In order to help you to prepare your portfolio, we recommend that you consider the following aspects. Please make sure that your portfolio is clearly labeled and with your name and contact telephone number. Carefully edit your work, setting out a clear narrative and logical sequence of themes or techniques in order to produce an exciting, creative and representative portfolio that informs us about your skills and interests in the fields of art and architecture. Your portfolio should have a maximum of 15 sheets. You should carefully select these. We are interested to see a recent sketchbook, and selected extracts of these can be included within your portfolio too. We would particularly like to see one image, either photographic or drawn, exploring your interest in architecture and urban spaces. Your portfolio should include observational drawings. We prefer these to drawings copied from a magazine or photograph. And don't worry about sketches not looking perfect, because the joy of sketching is imperfection. And then next, in your personal statement, we'd like you to address as to why you want to study architecture, whether you can tell us about a particular architecture building that you are interested or feel inspired by, and why. Can you tell us about your most memorable experience when visiting a building, a place, or a city? Which is your favorite or best piece of work in your portfolio? Thank you very much. That was it.
Thank you, Bruno. That was very informative, and I found the portfolio applicant section very, very helpful. Thank you so much.
I think it's available in our website.
Website, yeah.
And
in terms of entry requirements?
So there's, at the moment, the tariff points is between 188 and 144, the majority in terms of UCAS points, which I think normally means 2 ways in the B. I think that's not in terms of A levels. But that always comes down to our own judgment. You know, when we look at admissions, we don't look at tariff points, UCAS points, and if they're not there, it doesn't mean that we're not going to review the work. Yeah. So each applicant has a different story of constructing those UCAS points. Yeah. And sometimes we see things in the portfolio that we're quite compelled by. But that's normally the requirement. Someone, you know, the portfolio we like to see a kind of a demonstrated ability for aesthetic sensibility and expression. Yeah.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. Great, thank you so much. So I will pass this recording to relevant groups and students and get some feedback as well, and then share that with
Okay.
you.
The other thing that I was going to say, which is a recurring question from applicants, is that in our course there is no emphasis on physics or mathematics. There is the basic knowledge of those things, but we have technical tutors that are structural engineers, etc., who are going to help with the technical side of your project. No one is expected to come here being an expert in mathematics or physics. I'm just saying this because I
Yeah.
hear that question a lot from students. We want your artistic freedom at the forefront. Yeah.
Right, that's very good to know. Thank you for highlighting this. That's great. Thank you so much for delivering this presentation, Bruno. And hopefully I will get in touch soon with some feedback.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.